Hello, 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 and happy marvelous Monday to you all. It is a fantastic Monday. I hope that your weekend was great. Many of us, we celebrated Juneteenth. Others of us, we celebrated Father's Day. And I hope that if you celebrated, you had a great weekend. And whether you celebrated or not, I hope that your weekend was peaceful and it was great. I've shared with many of you that for this Father's Day, this was actually my first Father's Day without my dad. And it was honestly, it was a bit emotional starting out, but it turned out to be a really great weekend. And so what I did was instead of focusing on the sadness, instead of focusing on my dad not being in my life anymore, I chose to hold on to and to reflect on the positive times, the great memories, the moments that turned into everlasting and forever memories, right? And so that was my weekend. I got through it. I spent time with my family, my children, my grandchildren, and loved ones. And so that was my weekend. And like I said, I hope that yours was great. So I'm back on the saddle today. I'm ready to serve and I'm ready to serve you the tea. And so today, I hope that you've had an opportunity to check out the description. We are talking about tenant rights and things that people should know. The 5 things you should know when renting with intentions. Okay. So before I get started, let me just give a brief introduction of who I am. I am Karissa Span, the landlord and tenant coach. And this is what I do on my Facebook or YouTube channel right here every Monday at 7:30 p.m. I share information to help landlords as well as tenants. So if you or someone you know is a tenant or a landlord, and if this information is helpful for you, go ahead and smash that like button. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. As a matter of fact, do me a favor, share it with somebody else because I promise that this information today will help somebody. It's meant to help landlords, but more importantly, it is to help tenants today. Okay, so if you're tuning in from YouTube or Facebook, please let me know where you're watching from. I love to know where my viewers are watching from because, you know, I love to share information that's helpful for the entire rental community. So if you are in the DC area, the North Carolina area, New York area, go ahead and drop your jurisdiction in the chat box. I will respond to all of your comments. And if you have questions, go ahead and put your question in the chat box. I'm going to respond to those as well. All right. So just more of a in-depth introduction of who I am. So I've indicated that I'm a landlord and tenant coach, but more importantly, I've been in the industry for well over 28 years in property management and real estate. And I am no stranger to all things property management. Okay. So I promise you that if it's something that I don't know, and if you are in need of information or help, just go ahead and inbox me and I will get you that information. Information that I share today is not legal advice. I am not an attorney. I am, however, sharing the industry's best tips and practices to help you as a tenant or you, ma'am or sir, as a landlord. So I'm excited to be here. I hope that you brought your energy today. I hope that you came with excitement, and I hope that you have questions if you are a tenant. So go ahead and share it with tenants because this information will benefit a lot of tenants. I promise you that it may not be for you, but it's for someone that you know. So don't be selfish. Go ahead and share because sharing is caring. So before I get into the discussion on today, let me just welcome some of you. Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much, beautiful, for tuning in today, Lynn. Hello, Sissy. Thank you for tuning in from Brooklyn, New York. Hello, Mr. Anthony Ricks. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy to see you today. Thank you for tuning in from Virginia Beach. And I said I'm proud of you, Mr. Ricks, because I've checked out your Facebook page, and I'm excited for what you guys are doing in the Virginia Beach area. So listen, guys, true story. Information I'm sharing today, it's because something has happened and tenants were able to sue landlords. And here's the thing, what you don't know can and will hurt you. So don't think that just because, oh, well, I didn't know the law, I didn't know that I could not do it, doesn't matter. Doesn't stop lawsuits, okay? So the information that I'm sharing today, it is definitely going to help tenants, but I want this to be an eye-opener for landlords. Hello, Miss Hazel Booker from Brooklyn. Brooklyn is representing. Brooklyn, New York is in the building. Okay, so here's the thing. when it comes to tenants, tenants do have rights. All right. We are possibly, all right, I'm not saying definite, we are possibly coming out of the eviction moratorium at the end of June. Okay. Some jurisdictions have already extended it beyond June 30th. But what does it mean if the CDC does not extend the eviction moratorium? That means that landlords will be able to sue tenants for non-payment of rent. And in many jurisdictions, lawsuits have already, courts have already begun to hear cases for lawsuits filed. So here's what I want tenants to know. All right. If you're looking to move, if you are in the process of relocating to maybe another area, I want you to know your rights and your responsibilities, right? But today I'm going to share information for tenants who are currently in place. All right. So I'm going to share some tips today. If you have comments or if you have questions, go ahead and drop it in there. Today, my only goal and mission today is to walk you through the information that I'm sharing today, hoping that it will add value. But I want to make sure that it's easy for you all to understand. And if there's something that you don't understand, go ahead and just ask me, well, Karissa, can you break that down? Karissa, can you explain what that means? And by all means, I will stop to make sure that you're following the information that I'm sharing today. Because the one thing that I don't want to do is give information and then it not be understandable, right? So that's why I want this to be interactive if you have questions. So again, just thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining me and welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you're watching the replay, let me say thank you for watching to get this information. All right. And again, if you find this information helpful that I'm sharing, go ahead and share it with others. All right. So today, as we are talking about tips for primarily for tenants, but it's an eye opener and it's things that landlords should also know. Because here's the thing, I'm sharing information with tenants because I want the entire rental community to be educated. So tenants know their rights. So landlords should also understand tenant rights. And so that's why I do this each and every Monday. All right, so the first thing that I want tenants to know, when it comes to understanding your rights, when it comes to renting with intentions, we have to be intentional about the things that we do. We have to be intentional about being a landlord, but also for those who rent, we have to be intentional about being renters, and not just renters, but good renters, because at the end of the day, it is a business. And I don't want any tenant to think or believe that just because a landlord is renting property, that the landlord's supposed to just accept any old behavior. Well, that's not the case. It is a business. And I always tell tenants to always respect landlords, first and foremost, right? Because it is a business and they did not have to rent to you. So whether it's a landlord who owns a few properties, or maybe you have a landlord who owns thousands of properties, right? It doesn't matter. They're still human. It's still a business. And at the end of the day, and I think you can agree with me on this, everybody needs a place to stay. We all need a roof over our head. We all need a place to call home. And let's just be honest, everybody will not own a home in life, but everybody don't want to own a home, and that's okay. And so my goal and my job is to be the bridge between landlords and tenants, to try to bring togetherness, because it's not always easy renting to people you don't know, especially when it comes to renting to people who have different values, different beliefs, different principles, right? And so it is a business. I tell landlords to treat it like a business and they will get paid like a business. And I'm telling tenants to respect landlords, also to understand your rights. Okay. All right. Hello, Lynette. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, I see that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that compliment. Yellow is your color. I know, Lynette, I know. Thank you so much. All right, so the first tip I'm sharing today, again, this session is primarily for tenants, for renters. All right, so but landlords just ear hustle and just kind of pay attention to the information that I'm sharing today with tenants. All right. So the first thing that I want tenants and renters to understand is that you do have a right to communicate with your landlord. So here's the first thing. Always talk to your landlord. If you have any type of comment, concern, questions, remarks, or observations, share that information with your landlord. All right. Have an honest dialogue. Always be open, always be honest, and always be upfront. But keep an open line of communication with your landlord. if there's a problem. So for instance, let's say you have a landlord who's slow to make repairs, okay? And I get it. I've been in the property management industry for well over 28 years. Some of the clients that I have, they're my clients because obviously they needed some help with managing their rental property. All landlords are not created equally. And for whatever reason, some landlords are really slow when it comes to making repairs. And if you have a landlord that for whatever reason has been slow to make repairs, have an honest conversation with the landlord to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I reported that, for instance, my stove isn't working on Tuesday and it's now Thursday or Friday and nobody's been out. So to find out from the landlord, do you know when the stove can be repaired or replaced? Can you provide me with a timeline? Don't be mean. Don't be rude. Don't be nasty. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes people have a lot going on and maybe the landlord possibly forgot, or maybe they are working on getting another stove, whether it's to be replaced or getting a repair person out there to take a look at it. So call your landlord. If you don't have your landlord's number, maybe send an email, right? Or even a text message, whatever your mode of communication is. Have that conversation with your landlord to at least try to understand what's going on, the timeline, and when you can expect their repair to be made. Talk it over to see if the issue can be resolved. Because at the end of the day, the repairs still need to be made, right? Whether they need to be, whether the stove needs to be repaired or replaced. Something needs to happen. And until you speak to that landlord with respect, you don't know what's going on. True story. So sometimes, and many of you, you've been watching me and following me, you hear me talk about tenants from hell. It is real. All right. There are landlords from hell as well. So I don't want it to be one-sided. Okay. But at the end of the day, sometimes there are tenants. They are impatient. Landlords, I know that you can relate to this and this resonate with you. They'll contact you and may not give you time to get a repair person out, right? Or the first thing that they do when they contact you, whether it's by phone or text, they're cussing, they're disrespectful. Listen, as a housing provider, and I take pride in what I do. I take pride in the service that I provide to all of my tenants, okay? Even the bad ones that I would really not like to work with, but I have to because it's a business, all right? I still respect them, all right? But I do have some tenants from hell, right? And I have one in particular. And I promise you that if I show you my phone, like the first thing she does when she texts me, it's not hello, it's not hi, it's just, I mean, like straight out the gate, it's just nasty, it's just cussing. And sometimes I really even hate to talk to her on the phone because it's always something nasty or negative. And y'all know me, every day is a happy day. I'm always like, happy Monday, happy Tuesday. You know, I'm always full of positiveness. And not to say I don't have a bad day. We all have bad days, but I choose not to allow a bad day that I'm having. I choose not to project that onto somebody else. The last thing that I want to do is be the cause of somebody having a bad day because of my negativity or my negative energy, right? So let's just go ahead and put that to the side. We don't have to be bitter. We don't have to be nasty. We don't have to be disrespectful. We can still respect each other in the midst of things not working out. So anyway, this one tenant. So I called her because she sent me like a whole book, okay? She just texted me a whole book. I couldn't read it all. It was just too much. So I called this tenant. I said, hey, listen, I received your text, but I didn't get a chance to go through it. And the first thing out of her mouth was, B, I text you. If I wanted to call you, I would have called you. Click. Okay. So then she proceeded to send me more text messages that at that point, I just decided not to read because, listen, obviously there's something going on. We have to make repairs. You'll get a letter in the mail letting you know when maintenance, repairs, replacements will take place, and we'll just deal with it like that. My personal cell phone number is mine. I'm not required to respond. You know, I'm not required to give her my cell phone number for her to abuse me by way of text messages. So anyway, I followed up with the letter in the mail to let her know that a repair person was going to be there between 9 and 4. If she had any questions, if she needed to reschedule for any reason, to please contact me. Also in the letter, I did let her know, listen, by and because of CDC COVID regulations, please maintain a 6 feet distance. We do adhere to social distancing. Please make sure that a mask is on when the contractors are in your home. Okay, so let me just go back to the tenants. Again, you do have a right to talk and to communicate with and to your landlord. But here's the thing. If it's not respectful, if it's cussing, if it's going to cause the landlord to feel like their life is in danger or threatened, a landlord does not have to subject themselves to being mistreated. Okay. So if you have a good landlord like me, all right, who's trying to do the repairs and trying to do the right thing, it's always in your best interest to work with that landlord. All right. So the second thing is, here's another thing that tenants do have a right to do. You do have a right to purchase renter's insurance. I'm going to repeat that. And I know it's on the screen, but as a tenant, you do have a right to purchase renter's insurance. Okay, I'm sharing this information, and here's why it's important. Okay, so I did an interview this morning, and this is one of the things that I shared on the interview as it pertains to renter's insurance. Landlords and owners insurance does not, let me repeat, it does not, absolutely, unequivocally does not cover your items. If you're in a rental property, it doesn't matter if it's a house, if it's an apartment, if it's a trailer, if it's a container home, it doesn't matter what type of rental property it is. The owner's insurance will not cover tenant damage. So now y'all know I shared in the past where I had a tenant, she didn't have renter's insurance. There was a fire that started in the kitchen. We had to replace everything. We had to replace the stove. We had to replace the cabinets. We had to tear out and repair the wall. Well, because this tenant did not have renter's insurance, this tenant was still responsible for the cost of the fire because it was the tenant's responsibility to clean the grease from off the stove. And because of her nasty housekeeping, she never cleaned the stove. Over a period of time, the grease and the dirt, it built up. And so when she turned the stove on to cook, it created this fire, right? So renter's insurance is so important. Now, but here's the thing, because renter's insurance on average, it could cost approximately, let's just say $350, $360 a year. It's not really a whole lot. All right. And so for $350 a year, you can get yourself a renter's insurance policy of about $50,000. All right. Now, as a tenant, here's what I want you to keep in mind, because people ask me, well, Karissa, as a matter of fact, on my interview this morning that I did, they asked me, Karissa, what is a good amount of renter's insurance? And I would always start with what's important to you. Okay. So when you're looking for insurance, how much is enough for you? Okay. So let's just say worst case scenario, right? God forbid there's a fire. Something happens, a fire breaks out at the rental property and everything is gone. All of your clothes, all of your furniture, all of your shoes, all of your prized and personal possessions, all of your collectibles. If you lost everything in the fire or a flood, right? Natural disaster as well. What would it be worth? What would the value of your personal belongings be? How much insurance do you need to cover all of your things? And that's what I want people to think about. What's important? And then that's how much renter's insurance you should get. So if you have computers, if you have furs, I know Sissy up in New York, I know you have a closet full of stuff, Sissy. I already know. So I know you got furs, you got minks, you got all of that. You got the fine linen, you have the shoes, you have all of that, right? So what would it be worth as it pertains to a renter's insurance policy? Would you get a $5,000 policy? Would $5,000 cover all of your property if you lost everything in the fire? So I want you to start as a tenant. I want you to start with the end in mind. Think worst case scenario. If something happened and it was the end, you had nothing left and you needed money to replace everything. If you needed money to buy new furniture, new clothes, new shoes, and everything else that you own, if you needed money to do those things, how much would it cost you? So start with the end in mind. Think worst case scenario. If I had to start all over again at the end, how much money would I need? And that's how much of the renter's insurance policy I would suggest that you possibly look into getting. But obviously, everybody can't afford it. I get it. I get it. We're in tough times. We're in a pandemic. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Incomes are not as easy to come along for others as it is for other people. So I get it. But what you can afford, go ahead and do that, because tenants understand that your landlord's renters, I'm sorry, your landlord insurance does not cover your personal property. So let me pause for a moment to take a few questions and comments that's come in. Hello, Serena. Thank you so much, beautiful. Thank you for tuning in. Happy marvelous Monday, sis. All right, you said right. That's good stuff. Respect is key on both sides. Listen, you get it. You get it, sis. You absolutely get it, Serena. Respect is a two-way street. I tell landlords, respect tenants, and tenants respect landlords. Absolutely. Listen, Serena, yeah, absolutely. She used the B word, and it's okay, because at the end of the day, here's what I don't do. I do not allow people to provoke me to come out of my character. I know who I am, so I don't have to be offended if someone does not know how to respect me. It's their loss. If they're lacking respect for themselves, they can't respect others. I'm not going to be offended or upset that they don't have respect for them. The best that I can do for them is just pray for them. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm glad you think so highly of me, right? So I'm just that person that I because I know who I am, I know the value that I add. I'm not upset that people don't recognize who I am. I'm here to serve. I'm here to make sure that I provide outstanding service as a housing provider. But guess what? It's not easy. And if someone is going to go out of their way to try, that's the key word. If a person is going out of their way to try to get you to have a bad day, to provoke you to come out of your character, they must be a miserable person. But it's your job to determine if you're going to allow that person to take you to some place that's not going to be positive or productive. So anything that's counterproductive for me, I'm tapping out. I'm like, okay, bus driver, next stop is mine. I'm tapping out. So I'm getting off that bus ride. All right, so let me go to my second point for today. I'm sorry, my third point. So when it comes to tenants, now, again, this information is to help tenants, but it's also to help landlords to understand tenant rights. Tenants, you do have a right to protect your security deposit. Okay, you do have that right. You have a right to protect your security deposit. And so what does that mean? When it comes to protecting your security deposit, you can ask questions. All right. So before you sign a lease, make sure that you understand the lease terms. Make sure that it's clear and in writing what happens with your security deposit. If the landlord will deduct from your security deposit for damages, right? Also, and when you move in, do a walkthrough with your landlord. All right. You want to record any existing damages to the rental property to make sure that nothing was there before you moved in that the landlord can hold you accountable for. All right. You want to get a move-in statement with a checklist. But here's the thing, because landlords also know that a move-in inspection is important, right? So the landlord is going to document. They have pictures of the rental property before you moved in. So you can't come back like 6 or 7 months later, or at the point of you getting ready to move out, and say, oh, well, that hole was in the wall. It was like that when I moved in. The landlord should have pictures as well as videos, because they watch this live. They tune in every week, and they've been getting education and knowledge enough to know and understand that at the point of conducting a move-in, whether you are renting the entire property, or maybe you might just be renting a room, and it's quite all right. But the landlord will document the condition of the rental property. That way, that eliminates any misunderstanding. Nobody can dispute, oh, well, that was there, that wasn't there, that carpet was dirty when I moved in. Whether the carpet was dirty, the carpet was replaced, it should be clear. It should be in writing, the condition of the property. All right. Here's one of the things that I do when I do a lease up, And a lot of you already know and understand that my lease is at least 61 pages long. My lease package, no joke, 61 pages. But here's the thing with my lease, it is clear that if there is tenant damage, okay, I have a tenant damage itemization checklist or a form, and it basically gives information and guidance to the tenant so that if anything happens, I break down if there's a hole in the wall, all right, how much that's going to cost. If there's a hole in, let's say, one of the interior doors, a bedroom door, a closet, or a bathroom door, all right, there's a cost for that. And on average, if I have to replace a door, that's $90, right? But it's in writing. The tenant is provided with that information up front. That way, it's nothing misunderstood about the charges that this tenant is responsible for paying me for damage to the rental property. All right. And if it's not paid, then yes, that amount, it does come out. I will deduct that from the security deposit. So you do have a right to protect your security deposit. All right. Now, when it comes to the security deposit, at the point of you moving out, okay, you want to do a move out inspection. But here's the thing, and let me pause. All right. Let me slow down. I know I get a little excited when I talk. Sometimes this country accent, it comes out a little fast and it may not be clear. Before you move out, the first thing I would recommend or suggest, look at your lease, see how much time you must give your landlord according to the terms of that rental lease agreement. Some leases may say give the landlord 30-day notice. Another lease may say give your landlord 60 days notice that you're vacating the rental property. Now, because landlords are more knowledgeable today than they were years ago, okay? So landlords, especially those who watch this live, or they have me as their coach and they're my client, they already know and understand. When they get a notice to vacate from a tenant, the first thing that they're going to do is, as a matter of fact, I'm going to pause. I'm going to see. I know I have some landlords here. So if you're a landlord and you're watching, hello, Tabitha. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. So let me just say this. I'm going to take a poll, and I really want to know from landlords. If you get a notice to vacate, whether you're a landlord or not, if you get a notice to vacate, what do you think would be the most appropriate thing to do? Anybody? All right. So a tenant sends a notice, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, it's been nice renting from you, but serenata, au revoir, anyahi keseo, adios, I'm gone. They're moving out. What would be the most appropriate thing? What do you think would be the most appropriate thing for a landlord to do when they get a notice to vacate? And I'm gonna pause because I want to see your comments. So go ahead and drop that in the comment section for me. What should a landlord do? The most appropriate thing for a landlord to do. If a tenant sends a notice to vacate, what should a landlord do when they get that notice? All right, let's see. Mr. Ricks, you said inspect the property. That's a great response. Anybody else? Before I go on, is there anybody else? A landlord gets a notice to vacate. What should the next step be from that landlord? What should the landlord do next? So, all right. Sissy, you said schedule a date for a walkthrough. Okay, great. Anybody else? All right. Hey, Lauren, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. You said confirm move out date. Dates for final walkthrough to review the checklist of any deductions needed. Those are really great answers. All right. So all of the above is true. You should definitely inspect the property. All right. You should definitely schedule a date for the walkthrough. But here's the thing. When a tenant sends a notice to vacate, and I like your answer the most, Lauren. You want to confirm the move out date because here's why. Sometimes things will change. So a tenant may send a letter to say, listen, Karissa, I'm moving out in 30 days. Hello, Perline. Thank you so much for tuning in, big sis. All right. Me and my life forever. You said send a checklist out. Absolutely. But here's the thing. Hey, Jackie, thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. So here's the thing. When a landlord get a notice to vacate from a tenant, confirm the move out date. All right. Put it on your calendar that on July 30th, that the tenant will be vacating the property. Give yourself a reminder that the tenant will be moving out. And you also want to send this tenant, have communication. I send it in an email, I send a letter, and then I'll also call if it's depending on what type of tenant it is. So, but I will follow up this tenant to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I'm so sorry to see you go. Now, let me just pause. If it's a really good tenant, I'm going to encourage this tenant to possibly stay. Ask them, what prompted them to leave. If I can ask them, well, why are you moving? Because if it's a rent increase, if they're a good tenant, I'm inclined to not give a rent increase or maybe give a lower rent increase if it's going to keep a good tenant at one of my rental properties. But if it's a tenant, Miss Jackie, that I am not so fond of, then I might be happy that they're giving me a notice to vacate. All right. But that's neither here nor there. So when the tenant sends a notice, I'm going to follow up to say, thank you, I received it. I'm going to find out why they're moving. If it's something that's going on in the neighborhood or the community, I want to know that information. I want to know if it was something that's wrong with maybe the neighbors or maintenance, because you always want to find out the reason a tenant is vacating, right? And if it's something that you can improve, let's say the tenant is moving because maybe they just don't like your attitude. Maybe you're just nasty. Maybe they want to leave because I'm so happy all the time, right? So sometimes things happen that's beyond our control. It's beyond me. But find out, at least as a landlord, find out why the tenant is vacating. All right. If they'll tell you that, then go ahead and schedule the move out inspection date. Here's why the move out inspection is so important. And basically the same reason why I stated you want to do the move in inspection when you move in. So at the time that you do the move out inspection, landlords as well as tenants should do it together. All right. You do the walkthrough where both of you are seeing at the same time what's going on in that rental property. If there's any damage, as a landlord, a good landlord will point that out to the tenant. Well, hey, Miss Tenant, we're in the kitchen, and I see that the kitchen faucet handle is off. We will have to get a plumber to repair that, and we will deduct that from the security deposit. Or we go into the bedroom, right? And behind the bedroom door, there's a big old hole in the wall that was not there when they moved in, right? So I'm going to explain to the tenant, okay, this hole in the wall, we'll go ahead, we'll take care of it, we'll have it repaired, but we're going to have to deduct that from the security deposit. Then also, as Lauren indicated, you want to make sure that you have a checklist, and you're going to check off. You're going to go through room. You're going to check off everything on the list. All the doors intact. Are there any holes? Is there any damage to the floor? If it's carpet, is it torn? Is it ripped? Is it dirty? Is it filthy? Do you need to get a contractor or pay someone to clean the rental property? Is it bulk trash? Did they leave a lot of furniture? Because all of those things can be itemized and deducted from the security deposit. All right. And tenants do have a right to know this in advance. But when I contact my tenants, okay, and I tell them that I want to schedule the move out inspection, I'm explaining to them why it's important for us to do the move out inspection together. And I explain it this way. I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I received your notice to vacate. If there's any way that we could get you to reconsider, we value you as a tenant, and we would love if you would consider staying with us for another year. And if they just flat out say, well, Karissa, you know what, I'm relocating, thank you, my income has changed, I just can't afford it anymore, I'll go ahead and respect that. Then I'll follow up and I'll say, well, I respect that. I can appreciate your honesty, and thank you so much. Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, when would be a good day for us to conduct the move out inspection? Then I'll go on to add that the move out inspection is important because if you want your money back from your security deposit, then you want to go ahead and make sure that when we do the move out inspection, that you remove everything from the place. You want to make sure that it's clean, sweep the floors, if you will. You definitely want to return the rental property in the condition that it was in when you first moved in, because that's how you get all of your security deposit back, plus any applicable interest fees that's accumulated on the security deposit. And when I be honest, and I have that conversation typically, and in many more cases, I do have tenants, they'll go ahead, they'll clean up. They'll try to get somebody, their uncle, their boyfriend, brother, whoever, to help them clean up and get as much of the stuff out as possible. Because whether it's $500, $600, $2,000, $3,000 for the security deposit, people want their money back. All right. All right, so Mr. Ricks, your question, how would you handle a tenant who didn't agree with repair prices? And that is a great question. So if there's a tenant who don't agree with the repair prices, first of all, you want to give it to them in writing. So it should be maybe an estimate or an invoice from the contractor. If it comes from a contractor, Mr. Ricks, then whether they agree to it or not, they're responsible for the damage. And if they are so concerned about the cost of it, then they could repay. They could pay, a professional contractor to take care of whatever the damage is. But if it gets to your level because the tenant has neglected to take care of the repairs before moving out, then it doesn't really matter that the tenant doesn't agree with the prices because it's from a contractor. So I wouldn't worry myself about that as long as it's legit, right? So let's just say I'm going to use, for instance, I charge $90 for a replacement of a door, of a bathroom door, a closet door, a bedroom door in many of the rental properties, unless it is a specialized door. So I already know that the cost is $90, right? So I'm going to tell my tenant the cost. And if they dispute it, doesn't matter because I already know how much it costs. I'm going to provide something in writing to the tenant. I'm going to send it in writing with my disposition letter, letting this tenant know we had to deduct $90 for the door. And they could argue and say, that door wasn't worth $90. That door was only worth $15. Perhaps in their mind, because they're not in the industry. So sometimes they don't really know the cost. In their mind, they may think, oh, it's not worth that amount. But unless you have it in writing from a professional contractor and the cost is exact, meaning that it's not magnified, it's not like 10, 20, 30 times higher than what it actually costs, then it doesn't really matter that a tenant will dispute it. But that's a great question. Hello, Mr. Greenwood. Happy marvelous Monday. You said, or if the repairs are greater than the security deposit. Now, in that case, and that's a good point. Now, in that case, what I would recommend is to have a conversation with the tenant. So if you're a landlord, right, and the tenant's damage, it exceeds the amount that's on hold or in the bank for the security deposit, have a conversation with the tenant to let them know that there's a difference of $300, $400, $500 and ask them how would they like to pay that. And if they don't pay it, then unfortunately civil court or small claims court is your only course of action. And sometimes that does happen because the security deposit in many cases for tenants who may have moved in years ago, or a landlord allows a tenant to pay a minimum deposit when they move in, then they're generally not going to get a whole lot of money back. And so that's why we'll have these conversations with the tenant. But that's a really great question. And thank you for that. All right. So I said that tenants, they do have a right to protect their security deposit. All right, tenants, here's another thing. You do have a right to protect your safety. All right. So when you are in a rental property, to protect your safety, here's what I mean, because somebody's asking, well, how do you do that? And I'm glad that you asked. You can check with the local police department to see if that rental property is in a high crime area. All right. And usually if the rental property is in a high crime area, landlords are required to take extra steps to try to ensure the safety of residents. All right. So landlords may be obligated to take some steps to protect you. But you can ask those questions. That is your right. All right. Don't be afraid to ask. Now, here's the thing, because all landlords are not aware of crime. They don't work for the police department. So I'm not saying that all landlords know this information. Okay. I am not saying that at all. I know some landlords are looking at me like, Karissa, what the heck are you talking about? Listen, In high crime communities where I manage rental property, I communicate, I coordinate, and I work with the local law enforcement authorities. I have established relationships with the marshal's office, the sheriff's office, the police department, lieutenants, captains, and commanders. Okay, because I'm that person that I'm concerned about my rental community. All right, I really take great pleasure in making a positive difference for all of my tenants as well as all of my clients who trust me to manage their rental property. That's just who I am as a person. Okay. And me, I would not feel comfortable living in any community if it was a high crime area. All right. So that's why sometimes I go above and beyond. And I'm not saying that every landlord must do this because everybody don't know. All right. And so for me, this is what I do because before I got into property management, I actually started out in public safety. All right. So before I became this property manager, this property management landlord and tenant coach, before I got a real estate license, became an inspector, a housing specialist, a certified occupancy specialist, a tax credit specialist, a college professor, property manager who teaches property management. I actually started out in public safety. I started out with one of the local police departments in DC, and I have a heart for people. So I have a heart for making a difference and bringing change. So tenants, you do have a right to protect your safety. So do your homework in advance. Now, if you're currently living in a rental property, all right, and it is a high crime area, you still can communicate with your local police department. But here's the thing, because for whatever reason, there's this code on the street that many people live by. They don't like to be snitches. They feel like they're not going to report crime. They're not going to tell their neighbors. They're not going to tell sometimes crime happens right in front of them and they will not communicate with the police department, but yet they complain to the landlord that they want change. Well, there's no way to say that you want change when you know something and yet you don't say something. You have a right to protect your safety. And sometimes protecting your safety means that you have to do what might not be comfortable. So if you see something, say something. Now, like I said, if you're getting ready to move into a rental property, do some homework, do your background check on the rental community, right? So before you move into a rental property, this is what I tell all of my prospects before they submit an application. If they ask me, well, Karissa, what is the neighborhood like? Okay, so number one, because I teach property management, I'm very familiar with fair housing laws. Fair housing laws prevent me from saying what type of rental property it is in terms of crime. Okay, I will definitely tell prospects, ride by the property, go by during the day, go by at night, go by over the weekend to see if that's where you want to live. Because when you move in, that's the place that you're calling home. And so you should know the condition of the rental property as it pertains to the crime, the area when you move in. Because just because you move in and then let's say 3 months later, right, you signed your lease as a tenant and 3 months later you realize that, oh crap, they shoot. There's a lot of killings. There's a lot that's going on that I didn't know. Well, once you sign that lease, too bad, so sad, unless there is a circumstance or situation that would allow you to break the lease, you are still responsible for maintaining that rental lease agreement. So protect your safety, know what's going on in that rental community. All right. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop it in the comment box. Hello, Dr. Tucker. Thank you so much for tuning in, sir. I do appreciate you today. Hello, Lady Isaac. Thank you so much. Beautiful. All right. So let me go to my next and final point for today. All right. So I've already shared that you should talk to your landlord, right? You have a right to purchase renter's insurance. You have a right to protect your security deposit. You have a right to protect your safety. Fifth and finally is this: you do have the right to effectively deal with evictions. All right. That's so important. And I know that nobody ever really thinks about an eviction when you first move in as a tenant, and nobody really thinks that that's going to happen to them. But you do have a right to do that. You have a right to effectively deal with evictions. Here's the thing. Evictions And here's what some landlords don't know. All right. Evictions, and in many cases, all right, in many jurisdictions, evictions must come through the court. All right. So, for instance, if a tenant is delinquent on a rent, has damaged the rental property, has has unauthorized occupants in the rental property, and the landlord said, I'm going to evict you because that's a violation of your lease and you're not supposed to do that. Or how about the landlords who have complaints that tenants are not paying the utility bills and the water is cut off? All right. Let me speak to that before I talk to the eviction piece. With utilities, as a tenant, please know and understand that when the water bill is not paid, and it is your responsibility as a tenant, sometimes owners can lose their property. All right. Sometimes the city or the state will put a lien on their property that must be paid, meaning that water bill, it must be paid. So go ahead. If you're responsible for the utilities, go ahead and do the right thing and pay the utility. All right. But let's just say you don't pay the utilities. All right. And you have a landlord that is not knowledgeable. They don't watch these Facebook or YouTube lives every week. They don't know that it is illegal for them to put you out and the court hasn't been involved. The landlord must take you to court. All right. So it should be the judge's responsibility to say that, yes, this tenant can or cannot be evicted. That means a landlord cannot just come in and change the locks. They cannot just put your stuff out on the street. Okay. It doesn't work that way. So you do have a right to effectively know and understand how to deal with evictions. All right. Know when to fight when it comes to an eviction. Know what you can fight about. But again, you do have to go to court. All right. So just because a landlord is saying that they're going to evict you doesn't mean, I know some landlords are not going to like me for saying this. Just because a landlord is telling you that you're going to be evicted, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to be evicted. That landlord must take you to court, and the judge will determine whether or not whatever the landlord is proposing that you've done, it is the court's decision to say yay or nay, yes or no, you're going to be evicted or you're going to get a judgment, right? So understand your right. Understand that you do have a right to fight it. Now, let's just say that there's a dispute over repairs. Okay. So remember, I talked about the move-in inspection and I talked about how important it was. So let's just say you moved in, there was no move-in inspection. Okay. Let me just go worst case scenario. Let's just say that when you moved into the rental property, that the owner did not paint it before you moved in, right? And there was some sort of discoloration on the wall. And so now the landlord is saying, oh, well, that wasn't there when you moved in. You're responsible and I'm taking you to court, right? So it's not what we know, it's what we can prove. And so this is why you should listen to the information that I share, because it's to protect landlords, but it's also to protect tenants, right? So essentially, just because a landlord is threatening to take you to court, unless that landlord has documented proof that you should be evicted, chances are you may or may not be evicted. All right. So if you are living in a property that is uninhabitable, meaning that the landlord has not made repairs, the landlord can't hold you responsible for that. All right. True story. There's a young lady who lives in a rental property, and her landlord, for whatever reason, failed inspection. So the tenant is in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. All right. So the tenant did their part. She's been paying her rent, and her landlord did not make sure repairs were taken care of. And so usually what happens in those type of programs, if a landlord does not make repairs, the agency will send one of their housing inspectors out to inspect the rental property to confirm that repairs are made. They're going to give the landlord time to make repairs. All right. So that inspection, it failed because the landlord did not make repairs. The agency said, listen, Mr. Landlord, we're going to terminate your money if you don't make these repairs for the tenant, because that's a requirement for you to be a landlord in our program and for us to give you money each month for this tenant. Well, wouldn't you know it, that this tenant's landlord, he didn't make the repairs. All right. I don't know if he just didn't take the letter or the whatever, the violation seriously. So they terminated the money. He stopped receiving payment. So he thought that he could take the tenant to court because the housing authority stopped making payments to him. And obviously he hadn't listened to me, because if he would have listened to me, I would have told him that it's cheaper to make repairs. Because when they stop your money as a landlord, when you don't do what you're supposed to do, you cannot, as a landlord, check this, landlords cannot hold tenants responsible for something that they are obligated to take care of. And so this guy, he learned the hard way. It had gone like 5 months, okay? He had not received payment. He was upset, but he did have a good tenant, because although the housing authority stopped that landlord's payment, the tenant still paid her monthly rent to him each and every month. So let's just say, I'll use a round number. Let's just say $300, okay? She still paid her landlord $300 each month, although that landlord did not take care of repairs. So he tried to take her to court. That didn't work in his favor, because the judge said, well, if you would have made repairs, you would have continued to receive the money from the housing authority. So too bad, so sad, Mr. Landlord, the tenant will not be evicted. So the tenant was allowed to stay in the rental property. The landlord was upset. He was so hot. He was hotter than Carolina fish grease on a 120-degree weather day. Listen, he was so upset, and he was trying so hard to evict this young lady, and she knew her rights, but she was a good tenant. She knew that all she had to do was continue to pay her monthly rent, which is what she did. And that landlord had to go through the process all over again to get money reinstated. So as a tenant, you do have a right to effectively deal with evictions. Understand the law, understand what your grounds are, ask questions when you absolutely don't understand, when you don't know what to do, ask questions, because there are laws in place to govern how a landlord can do business. All right, so I'm coming to you, Sissy. All right, Sissy, you say, what if you pay for parking and the landlord is not providing security? The garage doors are never closed and your car gets stolen. And what if your water is so hot you can make hot tea with it? Listen, great questions. So if you pay for parking, all right, and there's something that happens, the garage isn't operating or functioning properly, I would say look at whatever is in the term of the rental lease agreement. Have a conversation. If the vehicle is stolen, have a conversation with the landlord that you're concerned about the safety of you and that the vehicle was stolen. All right. Now, the landlord won't be necessarily responsible for the vehicle being stolen, because that's what insurance on the car would cover if the vehicle is stolen. But have a conversation with the landlord, especially if they are charging you for that fee. If they're charging you for that service, they should be providing that service. So thank you for that question. Now, as it pertains to the water, if the water is so hot that it is a danger, please contact the local authority that governs that area, right? So maybe get a housing code inspector to come out to confirm that the water is too hot. Because if it's too hot, then that could be a problem. That is definitely dangerous. And I know that a lot of tenants have had that complaint. So if you or someone that you know is in that situation, go ahead and contact the local authorities to get somebody out there. Because the landlord, maybe they think that for them it's okay, but clearly it's not. And we definitely don't want anybody burned, because that could be another lawsuit waiting to happen if that water is too hot and it creates some type of second, third degree burns because it's too hot. And I have seen it happen. Truthfully, I've seen it happen. All right, Mr. Ricks, I'm going to take another question after this, and then we're going to wrap up. So your question here, Mr. Ricks, is what if the eviction process is in motion and the lease expires? And that's a really good question. So with that, I would look at the law in that particular jurisdiction. So if you've already gone to court, right? You already have a court case, you have a document number for the court case, then don't worry about the lease expiring. You do not have to renew the lease because you're trying to evict the tenant. but look at what the law says in that particular jurisdiction. And if you need some help with that, I can try to help you. So we can chat offline, but I just need to know more about the process. If you've actually already gone to court, if you started the court process, if the case has been heard, and more importantly, if you have a landlord and tenant attorney that's representing you. All right, because I definitely want to make sure that you understand what you can and cannot do. If you're going through eviction, I would say there would be no need in my mind to renew a lease that's about to expire. If I am evicting a tenant, I don't want the tenant to renew the lease. All right. So those are my tips that I have for you today. I hope that this was valuable, helpful for you. So the 5 tips that I shared today for tenants is talking to their landlord, right? They have a right to purchase renter's insurance because an owner's insurance policy does not cover their belongings. I talked about tenants having the right to protect their security deposit and understanding what impacts how much they get back on their security deposit. All right. I talked about how to understand and know that tenants do have a right to protect their safety. And then tenants do have a right to effectively deal with, know, and understand how to be evicted, although nobody wants to be evicted, right? So again, I thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you for your time. I hope that something that I shared was valuable or helpful for you today. This is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. right here on my Facebook or my YouTube channel. I do hope that something I said was important enough for you to share with somebody else, or maybe just take notes for it, right? Take notes for another day, because at some point in time, you could possibly need this information. So please continue to tune in each and every week right here at 7:30 p.m. Please stay connected online with me. I am on Facebook. I am on YouTube. This is my social media information. Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I'm live and when I am online. I do help landlords. All right. I have a passion for helping. I do teach. I teach property management. I coach landlords. And if you want more information, please check out my website, which is landlordlife.com. Landlordlife.com. All right. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is karissaspan@gmail.com. Let me put that on the screen. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me, karissaspan@gmail.com. All right. My time is up and I thank you for yours. I hope that you will tune in. You'll catch me right here next Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all next week.